All right, everybody. Good afternoon, Europe. Good morning, America. Happy Friday. Last weekday in what has turned out to be a pretty incredible start to 2026. January 30th. Let's take a look. Silver took a big dip. I was looking at this a little bit this morning. It's down to 99, maybe even lower. Right now, it's actually lower than this. But that's what I got refreshed in. It's 101. Might not hit it. To break a record of my exponential trend, all right, the upper bound would have to go 5x the trend. The trend is $23. 5x it'd have to get to, or approximately 5x, right? $118. This is monthly close. Gold and silver markets less tradable on the weekend, so really it's up till today, I'd say. Moves of today. Got to get to 118. Not surprising, nothing goes up forever, but a little bit of a drop. And I still remain pretty convinced that this is the way you need to be looking at this. All right. No matter how much the market could have been manipulated down in the short or midterm, over the longer term, I think you find a balance. So I'm quite skeptical that silver will go to $200 and just stay there. Quite skeptical. I want to show you this Bloomberg article. Firstly, I subscribe to Bloomberg, ridiculously expensive because I don't get the terminal. But it's just the news. The terminal is like $2,000-$3,000 a month. Even as a subscriber, you get these ads, just ridiculous. So I was thinking about that when I'm going to launch my charting engine, as we're calling it, in the next 2 months. I promise you're never going to get any ads like this. It's going to be paid by viewers like you. I mean, look at how much more perspective my charts give you than this. Okay, you can see the madness of these moves, right? Obviously, they'll give you the charts. But they were showing, this is kind of interesting, ETFs value has flowed out of silver ETFs, which are not really that big to begin with. All right, it's kind of interesting. There was another chart, I can't quite find it, but it just showed Bitcoin in terms of silver and gold. And again, we'll get to that, but of all the charts they could show you, I think it's most valuable to draw a trend line, all right, or even a trend line that evolves over time, and it's not, it goes up and down, and silver had a negative trend, just like gold, for 20 years. But over the long term, you'll get to something that looks like this. In silver's case, it's not an amazing trend, but still you have a baseline, and then you can statistically draw the bands, which can show you literally the bounds, all right? And in this case, these are the bounds. All right, so that dotted line will equal the all-time trend only at today's date. It's a very fickle thing sometimes, the statistics, but it's just how it is. And the price has never closed above 5x the exponential trend of the all-time trend. Only time it did was here. April 2011 was 4.8. It's the actual number. So to beat that, it has to get above that multiple. So we'll see. So again, just backing up, that's how I look at these things. I'm not trying to predict the moves that can happen tomorrow or on Monday morning. And yeah, I'm so annoyed. You log in, even on the desktop, when you pay for a subscription, you're just bombarded with the same stupid ads. All right, so let's look at Bitcoin now in terms of silver. Continue to, even at these prices, not look good, but we do have a little bit of a retracement. I'm reminded of the discussions I had with Kurt the other day. You know, is this going to be like this? Just a little bit of a retracement and then repeat the process down, or could this be the final bottom? Obviously, I have no idea. My title was clickbait to this video, but this is how I think you should look at it. If you're a silver bug, congratulations, but you're getting Bitcoin for an extremely cheap price relative to the trend at 700, 800 ounces of silver per Bitcoin. That's what the price is. Cheapest it's ever been. But interestingly, yeah, a little bit of a respite from the deluge. Let's look at gold. Seems that gold will break the record tomorrow. Low 5,000s. It only needs to clear $4,849 to be 2.4x the trend, which is a record. So gold bugs are loving it one way or another. Silver bugs too. Question is, when these mad booms happen, just caution. All I can say is caution. Weeks to months, it can stay inside. Our last cycle taught us months, right? Years, actually. Let's see. April 2011, $1,800. Gold, that's a month-end close. That was the top. And actually a record, 2.4x the trend at the time, which is this black line, right? There you see. It needed to be 1,813. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm painting the trend, so this was the record. So $1,814 was 2.4x the trend, which was 768 at the time, and that was the record. Fell out of that 2 years later, with still, you know, decent prices all the way through. So sometimes you can have a quick exit from this top area, like from January, little dead cat bounce to the end of the year, then never again for 20 years. Brutal. That's an investing lifetime, you know. 20 years. Obviously, I'm not calling for that now, but again, this could double. But you got to ask yourself, how likely is it going to be to stay up in a level that it's just never been at before across the entire free-floating life of the asset? Let's look at gold compared to Bitcoin, or Bitcoin in gold ounce terms. All right, not as extreme as silver. That means not as cheap relative to the trend, but still pretty cheap. 10th percentile event. currently 16.14 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. 10th percentile would have put it at 21 ounces. And this one remains interesting, all right, as I've told a lot. I think this is a pretty psychological level. Not where this is, but where the green line is, where the actual price hit here, right? 2022, 9, 10, 11, 12 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. 3 years and change back. Even with this weakness, Bitcoin's still worth more. And a nice little bounce here. Got to 15.5. Thank you for those of you who wanted to track silver more, because I never really tracked that as much. But we have them both. It's quite interesting. And we're going to see. You know, what's changed in Bitcoin, the ecosystem, in the last 5 years compared to, I don't know, the gold ecosystem, the silver ecosystem. I understand there's some silver, good conductive properties, and possibly some of this data center demand is fueled there. But that's up for the market, I guess, to determine how hardcore that's going to really be. I haven't shown you Bitcoin in log scale, but I will. Sorry, not in log, but in dollar log. Can't wait to migrate my charts over once I get this new database up and running fully. Getting lost in these old charts. It's coming. So I would say that each day that passes and the bearishness that you see, you know, hearing about ETF flows not being so good, which I don't have the latest painted right now, but I'll maybe show it on Monday. I have a less and less bearish feeling as you know, just as crazier as the metal picture gets. Same analysis. All right, this is multiple under the trend line, which at the time looked like this. All right, it was a pretty good power curve all the way back to 2016. So that same time where we were at 10 ounces of gold per Bitcoin, we went down to $16,000, $17,000. That was a 12, 13 percentile move, right? Nothing like what's happening with Bitcoin silver, right? Where we're hitting this level, not even close. And I would say statistically still, it seems quite unlikely. All right, and that level is $15,000. Anything's possible, but if anything, I think we're more in this area, right? These are the areas we have to test. I think if you break this one, which we're about to, what people are saying is like 70,000 is in play. I would agree with that. We're technically above the level on a close. Although we've broken it, surely. Have we broken the 4? No, we haven't actually. Close to the 40th percentile. So this is dollar terms based on the power curve. I'd say you break the 4, the 3 is probably in play. But if you don't, and the markets start, revaluing this stuff in terms of Bitcoin, back to silver, I would not be so bearish. I know I might sound like a broken record to you regulars, but I'd take the 10% off here. I'd focus on these levels. As a worst case. And we might hit them, but you know what? Every day that gold and silver goes crazier and geopolitics gets crazier, I'm less confident we get to these percentiles for a while. Good morning, or good afternoon, Sandra. Happy Red Friday to you. That's true. Red across the board, even gold, silver, but they're at completely different levels. Welcome, sir. Thank you. This is same chart I had for a while. I've put on the rest of world. It's my sort of freedom versus autocracy chart of where the money is. I mean, I could show more countries. I could show India. I could show whatever. This is kind of like, it's kind of like the northern hemisphere versus the global south, actually. But I'm highlighting the big autocracy. Not putting U.S. in an autocratic zone yet. We'll see. And I also put Hong Kong there, which unfortunately it's a big currency. But I was just listening on the BBC yesterday how these visits that Starmer's having with China, it's kind of, Starmer doesn't seem like he has much of a backbone to deal with a lot of the political problems that exist. Oh, and I also want to with this chart, I wanted to let me close that. Put in this one. All right, I'd like to just show you guys what I'm listening to. This is Telegraph, really good, UK, fairly conservative outfit, as well as the Times. Spies, hacking, and purges. Is the UK ignoring the China threat? Which I would say 100% yes. It's a good episode. My point of showing you guys this chart, I mean, besides the fact that I think it's interesting and I've been tracking this stuff for a long time, which is the money, the fiat sort of shitcoin based money of the world, it's a battle day in and day out. It's a battle. I would like for countries to be more free and democratic. It's not so easy. Good morning, sir. Nice to see you in here. Hope you're doing well. Yes, thank you for asking. Again, I was trying to interlace my thoughts with this. I'm a paid Bloomberg subscriber, not for their crazy $2,000-3,000 a month thing, but you do get access to charts that are made into articles, of course. And besides the fact that they're not as detailed and awesome as these, they got ads everywhere. I can't stand this. I'm a paid up subscriber. So you've set up me perfectly. You're going to have access to this. This is the point of that. You'll notice, by the way, these are new form compared to this. This is my old form, which is more manual. Thanks to the help, I will admit, of AI helping me automate a lot of this. I plan on setting up a paid option at something very, 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 very reasonable. It's not going to come out for at least a month. We'll see. Working hard to get it out. Already testing, the speed and stuff. And it might not even be as detailed as this, but you'll see all the stats. You'll get the stats. You'll have all this and more, much more, much more. So I'm excited. And yes, your answer is yes. Not before a month, but I hear you. I hear you. And thank you. I got to, test all these things like this. Title's in the way, all sorts of stuff, but we'll get there. You see how big China is, even compared to, obviously they have Hong Kong as unfortunately added into the red now. Used to be solidly in the blue category. Russia, those reserves are actually frozen, or that monetary base, the 300 billion's frozen in the West. Which is a good thing. And Iran is way overvalued because I'm using official rates, not the black market rate at the moment. So just a couple things to keep in mind there. And then the rest of the world is still huge, of course, but this is just one way to see this chart, right? Because you got United States, you got non-American NATO countries. So it's basically Europe plus Canada, and Turkey, European Union plus Canada, Turkey, Norway, some others. Japan, Korea, Australia, Taiwan, Ukraine. And if you want to pontificate and make a newsletter, you could also do that. We'll have a white label option, by the way, for this. But for me, it's also just interesting in showing the reality, right? I mean, I think the free world, particularly the European free world, should be much stronger in their positions against these the subversion that goes on. We can't get on Chinese social networks, but they can get on ours. We can't get on Russian social networks, and they have some. They can get on ours. The Ayatollah has a Twitter account. Iran's internet is completely turned off. There's a big difference in these societies, even though it's all a fiat shitcoin here. And we know that Bitcoin's going to accrete against this money. It's an interesting view, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks for that question. I promise you they're coming. Good morning, Feigned Structure. Thanks for tuning in. I'll come back to the charts, but since we're here, I want to show a couple other things on the political front that caught my eye. So Preston Stewart does good journalism on war topics. couple interesting things. So Ubiquiti, if you haven't heard of him, guy's fairly interesting. Used to work for Apple. Now he runs this, probably the best like networking Wi-Fi router, uh, one of the best in the world. He started his own after the Apple team wasn't fully convinced of his ideas. Also owns the Grizzlies, majority owner of the Grizzlies. So I'd encourage you to watch this one because this dude right here, I don't know his name, but he's from Hunter Brook Media. There's also an interesting thing, like obviously I would support this journalism as well, but well, let me tell you the story. So the story is Ubiquiti knowingly bypassed U.S. sanctions to sell dual-use tech to the Russian military, and they've, you know, it's not hard to do this, right? You go undercover, you can be in the United States, say I want to get stuff to Moscow, whatever. Been going on for years, and the answer would be that they have a compliance team that actually tries to, you know, say, okay, so let's not. It's just like Musk. I mean, Musk knowingly does it, but he says that there's no terminal access for Russia, but of course there is, and that's been proven as well. But anyway, so this company's taking a little hit, and people I know really like this. People I know that are tech people really like this company. In any event, we'll see what happens. But I thought another interesting parallel to this story was this Hunter Brook Media. It's kind of like this Hindenburg, right? Which you take you might, I forget what they even call it, active, I don't know if it's active investing or whatever, but Hindenburg would kind of do reports, and with their reports, you knew that they were shorting. These guys are doing it too, which I think is actually good. This is like pure market-based stuff, right? So these guys broke the story. They break the story, and of course, they're trying to help. They're trying to talk their book. And they said, we broke the story, but we are an independent media. Like I just said, no ads, no paywalls. They're actually trying to make their money by investing. So they have, you know, a capital markets team that's going to short Ubiquiti on the news of this announcement. Seems risky, but at the same time, I would actually say this stuff is better than certainly, first of all this shit, right? All these ads, but that, you know, this guy's like super excited. You could tell his heart was in the right place as far as all these sanctions go and everything. I mean, if Russians, you guys know how I feel about Russia-Ukraine war. So if Russians are killing Ukrainians every night, and you find a news piece that you think is underreported, and you think you can actually make money on it, you see. So I just thought there was two interesting things about that story. First of all, that's Ubiquiti. It's a big story. They actually have a big shared service center here in Latvia. It could have been Ubiquiti. You know, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just saying. I know that they have some sort of a service center here in Latvia, so you could have been Americans calling Latvians on the phone and said, well, yeah, let me talk to someone, and then they talk to someone. Oh, you can deliver this to Turkey, and then it can find its way to Moscow. So there's gonna be a lot of fallout from this, and I thought it was very interesting that this independent new sort of media organization that explicitly tells you they're investing on what they report is kind of interesting. It's a new way to report. Like if it's bad reporting that they do, regardless of what happens to their own personal books, then they would be accountable to that as well in the market, I think. So it's kind of interesting. Good morning, DEFCON ZERP. I should know who that is, shouldn't I? But I don't. Can you tell me? Vanity Fair. Did she break anything? Enron. She authored an article for Enron for the March 5th, 2001 issue of Fortune entitled, Is Enron Overpriced? got into a spat with Patrick Byrne, who was on this show. He's a crazy dude. Fannie and Freddie. Yeah, I mean, like real journalism is tough. I'm not a real journalist, right? It's tough. It's not easy. Thanks. Yeah, smartest guys in the room, which I have not read, but that's Enron is a fascinating thing, man. My first co-op, which is an internship in the U.S., was going to be with Anderson, who was also brought down with the Enron debacle. I had to cancel my internship because they went bankrupt at the time that I was going to work for them. But it's pretty wild. Ah, right. Thanks. I always forget. I got a fish brain with names, so thank you. So anyway, that's interesting to know what Sandro said, and I'll definitely take more interest in these guys as well. First I had heard. Again, just so you guys know where I'm coming from, always just to explain things. The FT has done this a lot. This is not the first time, but they always completely refer to like Latvia or Lithuania or Estonia as former Soviet republics, which just enrages us in all ways because we're never view ourselves as a never Soviet country. And this was a nice correction here from this San Diego professor. The Financial Times, a publication based in the former Roman province, an Anglo-Saxon settlement zone, and a possession of the Dukes of Normandy, keeps referring to the Baltic states, which were occupied by the Soviet Union for over 50 years, as former Soviet republics. And then he quotes the article. Perhaps the FT does not know that the UK did not recognize Soviet sovereignty over them, and that the British view is that they were never Soviet republics. And this is an important point. Like the United States didn't either. I'm pretty sure France, many other Western nations during the Soviet period did not either. But just a couple years ago, like 2022, I think, was 100 years of what's the word? Diplomatic relations was celebrated between the Baltics and the United States. It was 100 years in 2022. So just to give you an idea of where we keep coming back to with this nonsense is like, if you just keep like this, Tomas Ilves, one of my favorites as well. And I gotta read you something that he just talked about with Rutte from NATO. But he calls it, it's a strong word, probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people. He calls it racism against Eastern Europeans. I wouldn't use that word because we're such a crazily triggered society these days. But it's just clear that if you're not going to look at small free nations the way you look at large free nations, then we're going to go back to dark times. So anyway, you guys know where I'm coming from. Just to continue to tell you where I'm coming from is something like this is quite important. Where is I want to read you this now from Rutte and Ilves. I personally share Rutte's doubts, Ilves' doubts about. If you don't follow this guy, I follow him a lot. I mean, he's hardcore. He's not going to hold back. He's American Estonian, all right? So he's like me, except this guy was actually president of Estonia. He's hardcore. I'm beginning to have serious doubts about either the competence or the honesty/loyalties of the NATO SecGen. Warning Europe. Rutte says Europe would have to spend 10% GDP on defense to match U.S. capabilities. Is that really true? Given the size of the EU economy, not much smaller than the US, and that the US spends 4%, not even 5% demanded of us, on defense or all its worldwide assets, is Rutte's statement even remotely credible? We do not need worldwide expeditionary forces. We don't need 11 carriers. We don't need to maintain worldwide basing and infrastructure. We do not need a global posture. We do not have defense treaty commitments around the world. We do need to beef up transport space capabilities, 6th-gen fighters and missiles. But is that 10%? The 10%, given the EU economy, is just spitballing. It's neither backed up by facts nor credible. And if not, why should we take the current 6th-gen of NATO seriously? So again, I don't have a lot of respect for this guy. This is the Dutch. This guy was Dutch PM when Nord Stream was launched. You can see pictures of him with Merkel, Stasi, Merkel just opening the taps for the Russian political nonsense that was Nord Stream. But this is the same guy that calls Trump daddy. I mean, this again, if Europe is going to get out of all this mess, and I think that they will, like, this is not the right attitude. If the Americans want to cut us out, then you have to push back. And so these are the kind of things that I actually like. I'm not sure, I'm not sure how much the average European pays attention to any of this. Maybe not much at all, but it's time for Europe to just, maybe the Transatlantic Alliance can continue, but if it does not, we need to be prepared for that. Yeah, he's really great. He doesn't hold back. Just a couple more. We'll get back to some charts. In America, the only people that post stuff are those that are never, like, that make sense, are those that are not running again. So I like Bacon. He's not running again. There's been lots of reports that this guy has said, Trump's golfing buddy, mind you, has said such insane things. Like, he didn't know that this was the 4-year anniversary of the war coming up. He thought that this war was longer than World War II. He's almost certainly, when he says that, thinking of the Eastern Front War, when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, which also included occupied Baltics at the time, which was in June of 1941. But World War II, as such, would start in 1939 September, when Germany and Russia together invaded the Soviet Union. So again, the Soviets always get this pass that I just hate. I have zero faith in Witkoff, and now I don't speak by myself on this in Congress. Others feel the same. Everybody knows it. I mean, it's absolutely insanity that this guy is taken seriously, and I'm glad that the light is being shown. Where's the other one I wanted to show you? Here's another Republican, Senator Tillis, who's not running again. President called you a loser. I am thrilled about that. That makes me qualified to be Homeland Security Secretary and Senior Advisor to the President. I hope that Americans stop this just gaslighting. It would be very good for all of us, but we're going to have to see. If you don't read Phillips O'Brien, please do. Institute of Study of War. The Study of War Institute. It's the Institute for the Study of War. Very good books. He has a new one out, which I haven't read yet, which I will, about the Ukraine war. Not John Mearsheimer, but yes, Phillips O'Brien. He's going to do normal realism, I think. This is the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine actually standing up, going back to Ukraine, saying it was shameful how she was fired. Or no, she had to step down because she was so ashamed in the U.S.'s treatment of Ukraine over the last year in particular. And I'm not defending Biden, by the way, when I say that. Again, a Republican politician who's not running for re-election. We treat our allies with brass knuckles and our adversaries like Putin G with velvet gloves. This whole thing about Canada and the Gulf Stream stuff is hilarious. It's not even certified in the U.S., as I understand, but he's just, whatever this sugar high Trump is on after Maduro. You saw it go to Greenland. Now it's going to Canada. Very interesting. And then for those that still think the Russian hellscape has any sort of a normal news, like a normal flow of information from the public to the to the great leader that is Vladimir Putin, just 48 hours after Gerasimov's statement that Russia controls Kupiansk, which is not the first time it said that, Ukraine releases video showing not only Ukraine's armed forces controlling Kupiansk, but freely walking around the city in civilian gear with no body armor of any kind. Okay, this is propaganda. I'm going to say it's propaganda on one side, propaganda on the other side. It is clear that the Russians do not control Kupiansk. You can look at a map, look at it. This is so embarrassing for Putin. He said this already last year now. Maybe even in November, not December, maybe start of December. And they can't tell him. They can't tell him because this is such a raging autocracy where no information gets to the dear leader. It's unbelievable. It is quite clear from even the Russian Telegram channels, you can just search this anywhere, they do not control this city. And it's so embarrassing for them because they said they would control it. And they don't even come close to controlling it. So again, madness all around. I watched this morning. I thought this was very, very good. Protecting Europe with Ukrainian innovation. Kubilius, he's the Lithuanian head of defense for the European Union, but he's Lithuanian. Alexander Kamishin and Neil Ferguson. Alexander is one of the drone, I don't know his title. He's not like the leader, but really helping Ukraine with the drone warfare. Anyway, very, very good. I think from the perspective of Europe, helping Ukraine, I think it's very, very good. Sorry, just a couple more here because it's Friday, and I'm going to keep talking to you guys about this. You just keep looking at the facts. Europe always paid more to help Ukraine. Europe does a lot. That should be clear. And for our American friends who are just waking up, you're right, Europe needs to pay more for their defense and stuff, but it's not like they do nothing. And here's what they've done for Ukraine. And $100 billion more is committed on top of this. All right, so let me take this off. These are the commitments. These are the actual payments as of, October was the last date I got from the Kiel Institute. 185 billion euros versus 114 billion euros for the US. Europe has committed another 100 billion euros. And if you're wondering, well, why does the US say they do stuff? They have this Pearl program, which they do buy American kit with their own money and give it to Ukraine. But I think that it should just be more known that Europe has the capacity. They do have the capacity, and our American friends hopefully will not be so delusional when election time comes, if they have elections in November. This is just a figure I calculated based on the total casualties. It now costs in Western aid, which does not include probably all of Ukraine's defense budget, but if you add all this aid to the point really here, makes the most sense. It's 262,000 euros per casualty. But this is what Ukraine is dealing with. And I still think, and this is another thing that was said in this video, the most efficient way for Europe to deal with all of its problems is not to just sit around and implicitly sort of wait if they lose. It's to fund and help them win right now. And so if they do lose, you would have, a million-strong Ukrainian army and a million-strong Russian army. They would combine, just like, which was a point made in this video, which I thought was very good. Russia immediately mobilized everybody in the occupied territories of Ukraine to fight against their brethren, which, by the way, happened to the Baltics from both forces, both from the Germans and from the Russians in World War II. So it's not pretty. None of it's pretty. War's not pretty. But the best way Europe could help the situation is just to arm Ukraine to win. I think that they're finally getting this. By the way, anybody who thinks Putin's little energy deal, which he's secured, is going to do anything, look at this. Apparently there's an energy ceasefire because it's been such a humanitarian disaster right now. Still 500 buildings in Kyiv with no power. If you just look at this black line, the 30-day drone average attacks on Ukraine, And by the way, I'm still not sure if this is shot down or attacked, but it's regardless, it's 80% of the total. It might be shot down. It's not good either way. This is quite a difference if the 30-day average is 718 drones a night versus only in December 288 drones a night. Anybody who knows anything about trends and numbers, which we like to look at here, this is not going to stop. Whatever Trump tweets about, whatever vomit his golfing buddy talks about, this is just not going to stop. Also quite interesting are the missile attacks. You see they're not as frequent. Still terrible. But notice something. Someone pointed this out to me, or the idea. It's like there's actually been more casualties, more civilian casualties, more missile attacks when Trump has been in power. There was a little bit of a lull here when he was inaugurated. But just before he was inaugurated, there was a lot of missile attacks, frequency, and then after. You can see here, I mean, it's, okay, they were using a lot of Soviet missiles here. There's different waves. But there's been a strong wave of attacks with missiles every night as well for Ukraine. The frequency just as strong as ever. The Russians don't care about life. It's now over 10 casualties per square kilometer of Ukraine that they hold. I just can't, personally, as someone living close to the front, to the countries at war, I can't express how crazy it is what Ukrainians have to deal with every night fighting these goons. Again, you look at this number, you know, unless a miracle happens, no one in Ukraine even expects it to stop. It could stop if we had overwhelming force delivered from the West, but the collective will just still isn't there yet. Even though that would be the cheapest way and the fastest way to end hostilities is to provide overwhelming force to the Ukrainians to push the Russians out of their occupied territory. This trend isn't going down. Russian casualties, 1.2 million. That doesn't mean deaths. Probably 30% of that, on the, I'd say the high end, are dead. Unbelievable. And then we go back to this chart. I know we're all super pro Bitcoin escape hatch here, but you know, if the Western world could cut back on all their entitlements, their fake promises, and just deliver on security, I think we'd all be much better off. Except, you know, the manufacturing engine of the world, the big red one here, is probably, they're ramping up their subversion more than ever. I would highly recommend this video again from The Telegraph. Spies, hacking, and purges. Is the UK ignoring the China threat? Obviously, the answer is yes. But I am glad that we're looking in percentages now. I knew that was going to show up again. More bugs. Still showing you the dollar term. I got to put that. Is that? No, nothing even close to a. Percent. It's less than 30% of the world, as we know. but not less than 30% if you only counted the red and the blue. Let me just do the world real quick. What is it? 5.4 over 27. 20 exactly. 20%. China holds 20% of the world's base money. But if just think about this, like how crazy is it that Russia is so small and a country with 10 times less money than it, Ukraine, can hold them at bay. Another interesting thing that came up in this video was probably the fact that Europe is not prepared to deal with a nuclear question outside of the US umbrella, because it's come on Europe so fast. And I agree. I mean, the craziness of the Trump admin has put this question so fast. Like, is the French nuclear umbrella really enough for Europe if the US goes away? I'm not saying the US goes away. These people aren't saying the US goes away, but you need to be prepared if they go away. Poland might get the bomb. Germany might get the bomb. Maybe that's better. I don't know. It is expensive, though. Maybe Ills would be wrong on this point if you don't take into account all the nuclear, like the cost of a nuclear program for many more European countries could be very expensive indeed. But I don't like Rutte one way or another. All right, that's my political rant for now. Anybody have any short-term thoughts on good old price? With all the madness that I just described, and with such an attention to the metals, I do have to admit, my bearishness that sort of started the year is less there for Bitcoin this year, but nobody knows what will happen in the short term with price. I've never seen so many gold and silver articles on Bloomberg, honestly. So funny. Yes, they are. And silver change, this should update. Oh, down to 97. I was at 104. Looking like this is not going to happen this month. Might have to wait till February. You need 118. I know that this doesn't really mean anything. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen next month that it breaks it. But just so you see the relative levels relative to the trend. When we were at 125 silver, we were above this red line, this arrow. So when I come back Monday, because I probably won't stream tomorrow, we'll see if I'll have to wait another month for the record, or if it won't make the record. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. I mean, there is no indication in the 50-year trends that silver makes it more than a month at these levels. But of course, if we're only really like here, right, and then we go up a couple more months, all totally possible. No, as you probably expect, I didn't even know her offhand. I'm focused a lot on my own like research. So, anything I should look up in particular here? Glenn Deason. I've seen this guy actually, because I watch so much different Russian stuff. This guy would be not. Yeah, this guy would not be in my. Probably why I don't focus on this guy much is because, yeah, he seems to be what? Fairly pro Russian imperialism. We're coming up on the 4-year anniversary. I'll look for him, but I just want to show you. Is this guy even on anymore? There's a few of these Russian experts who were so discredited. Like the first month of the war. Did he delete it? One second. He might have deleted it. But there were, like this one guy, this moron, Clint Ehrlich. He was all over Twitter right at the beginning of the invasion, like, second greatest army in the world about to take over Ukraine. Many people are predicting that this is the day of the invasion. Many people are predicting that a Russian invasion of Ukraine will look like the failed Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. They're wrong. The world will be shocked by the swiftness of Russian victory. We're about to witness a Sputnik moment. The Russian deaths per month right now are more than one full Soviet Afghanistan. There are many multiples over in an American Afghanistan, although not defending how we do there either. These people are such monsters to even consider siding with these. These guys are just. There's obviously money in the wrong way going there. There's my answer. I'll probably not follow this Deason character anytime soon. The best thing from Russia's side, I would say, is this. All right, so follow Jay and Kiev if you don't. But they're just suffering as much as Ukrainians right now. Of course, it's not reported on. You risk even like your life sending videos like this in Russia because they geopoint the location. They might find metadata of who sent it. They throw you in the gulag for a little bit. This is why we see less and less of the drone strikes that we saw before because it's illegal. But even this, I mean, Russians will suffer more than anyone. Maybe not more than anyone, but I would say maybe more than anyone in the Western Hemisphere. To consider the West, if they were going to be part of the West, which they're not. Eurasia. They just suffer and suffer and suffer. This is Putin's goon in Chechnya. He apparently is extremely sick, might die very soon. I don't really know why his picture's here, but he's like in Moscow. His son was also in a big car accident, which might not have been a car accident as an accident. The hellscape that is Russia is facing problems, which is very, very good. And I keep going back to this too. Like, you know, the quick buck newsletter writers are going to say, okay, we all suck in the West. America's terrible. Europe's terrible. Everybody's a tranny. It's just life sucks. But, you know, we saw the purge that Xi did with his generals. And I would say that's a very good thing. And we're seeing what happens with Russia. I mean, their economy is just absolutely in tatters. Iran is killing tens of thousands of people right now. It's wild. I don't have an answer for any of it, but I just hope that the free world can stay free and not go into sort of hysterics. uh, did you guys see Carlos Alcaraz had a crazy comeback against Zverev? Might have called a medical timeout when he was cramping. Zverev was pissed, but he still ended up. Here's another. Again, this is just my feed. I'm not, but this guy is a Monty Python, so I'm going to show it. I'm not trying to provoke any American friend right now, or Canadian, by the way. So this is one of the most profitable resource provinces of Canada. There are people that want to separate here, go to the United States, as I understand. Don't for a minute think that on your side are also legions of Chinese and Russian trolls. They don't even care for your cause. They just want to sow the division. And again, I don't know how much these are things true. If you know, Financial Times reports it. Trump tried to do the same thing with the Zelensky officials, Zelensky opponent candidates, right? To hold elections and all this stuff, even though they're under martial law and it's the Constitution says you can't hold elections during that time. And the Rada in Ukraine voted like 300 to 1 not to hold elections, even though the Americans tried to get them to hold elections. This is just crazy that America is trying to do this, all this interference. Like I said, I'm not trying to gaslight anybody here. Just what I'm a big fan of John Cleese, and if Monty Python says it, I tend to laugh at it or agree with it in laughter. This was a nice one, by the way. my interview with Marty will air tomorrow, I think, and he's obviously got his lens on a different thing. I think he's more, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he might not see the Trump administration the way I see them, the way that they're dealing with foreigners. But I think it's quite nice when the Germans and the French can get along. They put this little propaganda video of a penguin with, you got Merz, Starmer, Macron on a backpack talking about the rule of law, and then they even show Macron with his eyes, with his sunglasses on, which is hilarious at Davos. This is a Europe I'm proud to be a part of. I have to admit. The Germans doing a propaganda video for the French, for the Ukrainians, for the Brits. And we have Vicegrad. Vicegrad's generally pretty good, but this is a little bit. I would agree with this statement. Actually, I would agree with this statement 100%. Marty and I also kind of had this discussion. Like, it's. What worries me is the. All right, I guess I'll just comment on it a little bit. The murders that happened over the last couple weeks with ICE, we talked about a little bit on his show. Not much, but I'd be much more cautious of masked ICE officials in the street. As Rand Paul said, that we all saw the same video that looked like an execution. Doesn't matter if the guy was radicalized, if he was paid by commies. I have no idea. We're not in Night of the Long Knives territory yet, but to me, that's the best example of the scary area where the U.S. is right now. I mean, don't believe your lying eyes is basically what seems to come out of the U.S. right now. I don't know. I'm starting to go on clickbait now and just show. Yeah, well, they have tons of migrants had to come in during this Syria war, which we can thank Russia for, but we can also, of course, thank America for the George Bush policy of illegally invading Iraq and causing refugees. I'm sure the Germans are pissed. I just hope that everybody stays together. Okay. Thank you for saying it for me. I like Marty a lot. I really do. I like Marty a lot, and I respect him. I just take a completely different view. Mm. I forget his name. He's from the Kiel Institute. Moritz Schulerich, Kiel Institute, fantastic database. That's where I get the data for not this one, but for this one with the aid. So they're really good at tracking all this stuff. You know, he makes the point that still, right now, well, I don't want to misquote it, but the general idea is if you take Europe as a whole, I think the capacity is there, right? The production is there, the know-how is there. I think he says something like Europe used to produce more planes, tanks, buses, maybe not tanks, that would be like early Europe, but America surely produces more tanks. But the point was, at least as a whole, I think Germany has help. The problem is Europe just cannot believe it all together, you know, like just there's a common threat here. The cheapest, best thing to do is just arm Ukraine right now. 4 years too late. And they're still holding them off. Yeah. It would be good to get more charts, and I will, that would maybe show these same breakdowns, but with some sort of balance of payments, or even more detailed, like on production, exports. Obviously, all this data is there. It's just I have a certain way I want to look at it. May or may not be the way you guys want to look at it, but I'm thinking about it this way. To me, the X factor is the only organization that is unclear about their stance, besides like Hungary, not organization but polity, is the U.S. right now. I mean, the very base of this pie, of this line chart, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. You too, sir. Take care. So yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, this energy pause, which is apparently coming, and Witkoff's all excited about. First of all, let's see what happens tonight. Let's see if this goes to zero. Can you guys hear me? I had an issue there. I swear it's the cold weather. Can you hear me? Sorry about this. Thank you, Daniel. Sorry. I actually had this issue when I was recording with Marty the other day. It's so cold here that I swear it's even the weather. But Black and silence over there. Some people say I'm back. Some people say I'm not. If it gets bad, I'm probably not going to come back just because it's been an hour, but I'd like to keep talking with you guys about a couple things. If anybody lets me know if they still can't hear me. Sandra. Cool. Anyway, yeah, so a bit of politics, bit of the charts here. You guys let me know if you want to see something else. I was talking about the energy pause apparently on the energy infrastructure has apparently happened. Witkoff announced it. I will believe it when I see it, but also, you know, you just look at this and you say, okay, maybe one night, maybe 2 nights where they have, it's never going to be 0 drones. And okay, maybe they don't go for the energy infrastructure with their missiles. But in my opinion, the only way to end this war is with overwhelming force given to the Ukrainians. Or if these people would finally stand up and say, we're not going to take it anymore. Great follow, by the way. Although I think he sometimes is a bit too hardcore with, like again, what Macron is. All right, so France boarded one of these vessels, I guess released it. This stuff doesn't particularly bother me because at least we try to follow the law when we do it. And we should have done it much earlier. I think we're totally within the law. Follow Sal from Shipping. It's a great YouTube channel. Jay's hardcore. And he lives there dealing with this, you know, these attacks every day, so. Any change for silver? 98.5. The record is slipping away. It's always next month. We'll see. Doesn't look long lasted in my view. Quicker they rise. Right? Anybody else want to share any outrage with me today? You know, on my feed, it's less even Bitcoin these days. It's more what's happening with American foreign policy. As you know, that's my interest. So for some more outrage for you. I would agree with this. I love the Rubio memes, but Nevada. Democrat, I presume. I mean, is it not bizarre to anybody else that you have, all these foreign ministers meeting and then it's like Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff? Some people say Marco is strategically doing his best he can to set himself up for 2028 while just knowing that he's going to throw all these policy stances that he knows are going to fail to these guys, Kushner, Witkoff, and Vance, by the way. I don't know. I don't follow U.S. policies enough to really take the temperature on this, but it does seem like um, the polls and everything are getting quite bad. This I would 100% agree with. I do not see how people. I imagine the normal American public sees this. Every cabinet meeting is a Politburo session. The 18 trillion you brought in is creating an economic boom of 7% GDP growth. It's probably being underestimated right now. I mean, politics is a bunch of thieves and liars, but it's just wild. Do not believe your lying eyes. Should call this Outrage Friday. So again, I see headlines like this. I mean, how is this even a thing? January 2026? Who wants to share in my outrage? Um, we do talk about Night of the Long Knives a little bit on Marty's show, and just to provide a little more context. Again, I'm not a historian, but what happened at that event was a centralizing power more. I've read a lot of Tim Snyder. He talks about that a lot. The German state used to have, just like the U.S. state, by the way, local deputies, local law enforcement. The police stations are literally in charge. Um, the sheriffs, which are all local, have absolute control over local police. The federal government cannot control like what the sheriff does on some level of whatever, however it goes with the police, but it's very decentralized. And this is just clear to me, like you see what happens with ICE, you see what's happening with other parts of You know, if there was any Republican ideal, it usually was keep the government out of power. It's completely turned on its head. And that's what happened in the Night of the Long Knives. It was the brown shirts who were Hitler's buddies. The brown shirts, kind of like ICE, right? They were terrorizing the streets. And then the next thing you know, the SS comes in and murders a bunch of them and old democratic, German democratic politicians from the before the Nazis took power. It's a centralization of power is the risk. Well, this is nice. You get a troll who Kasparov actually responds to in ratios. You are a little, yeah. I forgive your ignorance because I've been fighting against fascist autocracy for decades while you are new to eagerly kissing its ass. Like, this is Outrage Friday, guys. Outrage Friday. Kasparov's a great follow. I saw that. That's awesome. I think I did see that headline. Thank you for that. I have a list of Euro defense. Let's see if I can pull this up. It is great news. I mean, just less talk, more action. Stay democratic. That's what the world needs. Here it is. Okay. If I use TradingView enough, I would figure out how to. Come on. 1 second. One second. Performance. Trying to share the damn chart mode or the time series mode. But anyway. Rheinmetall, even since the start of invasion, I think most of these gains were even in the last 2 years, not just 5. Very good. I shared the news that they opened up a branch in the Baltics. I guess Lithuania, but I think in Latvia they're even opening up one too. It's really, really good. I would love for the Transatlantic Alliance to keep existing very nicely, but Europe has to plan for the fact that it might not. Americans are going through a really big, I don't know what to even call it. It's so polarized there. And I sent some of these, you know, all the memes, the charts, everything to my buddies who I know that are on my side, but even you could say like center right people that might even agree with more Trump policies than not, trying to say like, are you worried about this? And you know, whatever. Everybody's biased about their friends. Like I like pretty reasonable people, hardworking people, and they're just saying like, dude, the daily grind. Like I don't even have time to look at this meme. I don't have time to think one way or another about where it's going. And then you get these events like these shootings, and people just collectively huddle to their team red, team blue. Possibly, possibly. Although, as I always say, the big problem with that wave theory is World War One and World War Two, right? One of those can be winter, but the other one should be like summer. If you're going on the 80-year, 3-generation cycle theory. In any event, like I always say, I would never defend the Bush invasions. Don't defend the Putin invasions. We are just a world that likes to go to war. I really hope Europe can not do that and can just help Ukraine win, and somehow come out of all of this much, much stronger. And hope our friends in America stay calm. It's probably going to leave a good spot, good words. I don't think I could leave it any better for the weekend, guys. That's all I'm going to have to say today. Thank you all for joining amidst the technical difficulties. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have any charts you'd like to see. Better stuff is coming. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's coming. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Sandro.